I'm deep in the Polish forests at the moment, and it started to rain, so I guess what better thing to do than make a video for you. I wanted to reflect a little bit on something that I talked about in a previous video. When I was talking about Soul or Sunna, the Sun goddess, I was arguing that she is pretty accessible wherever you go, independent of content, of country, of culture, because she's just so obviously there, presenting her divinity to us. Now, whether a god is accessible or easy to worship can depend on a lot of different things. And what I want to highlight here is basically the conclusion where I left off in the last video, and that is, just because a god is less accessible, it doesn't mean they are less powerful, it doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means that you need to put in much more work in understanding them, and you need to put in much more work in developing your own cultic worship when you approach them. And in a way that can be even more satisfying and fulfilling existentially than approaching an easier deity. I will tell you two examples. When it comes to Tyr and when it comes to Ullur, we are talking about two gods about whom we have a few mentions in the Eddas, but apart from them, you really have to dive into the sources. You have to dive into the archaeological sources, the linguistic sources, and you have to find other texts that mention them in order to get a fuller picture for starting a worship. I myself find Tyr as my patron, and it took me years actually to properly assess his characteristic and his value system, and it required sources from all over England, Denmark, Iceland, Germany, and many other places. In contrast to them, if you are started to Asatru, understanding Odin or understanding Thor is actually very easy, because we have plenty of mythology from them. Already in the Eddas, we have plenty of written and archaeological sources there. But here we can see another problem appearing, and that relates to the nature of the particular deity. When it comes to Odin, he is a trickster god. Contrary to the common perception, he can be, let's say, very rude if it serves teaching you. He's not necessarily a god who will be soft on you. For him, when you relate to him, the primary question is whether he can teach you or not. In contrast, Thor has always been known as a friend of humankind, a protector of humankind, who is easy to access, who has this very straightforward and down-to-earth approach. I will tell you the example of my other patron god, Frey. Now, you can worship him anywhere, but at certain locations, his presence will be much more easily felt, and that is normal. Pilgrimage is a common practice in all religions, and so if you go to Uppsala, you will experience Frey much more, and you will find it easier to connect to him, even if it's possible to connect to him elsewhere too. In contrast, there are many local smaller deities, and some of their names are known from medieval chronicles, who can be only accessed at certain locations because they are tied to the land. Even though they are deities, they have names, they have stories, you can only really worship them if you live at a certain land, if you inhabit the same land that they inhabit. But again, these differences don't make any of these gods any less or worse. It really depends on what you find useful, where you are, how do you worship. Many smaller and bigger factors play into consideration when it comes to connecting to the gods. And I hope that this schematization helped you a little bit to further think how you can approach your own gods, whether you are in Asatru or worship another pantheon.